There are some old movies that you just have to watch, enjoy, and walk away, because if you think about them too hard, they start to feel a little icky. Like Daddy Longlegs with Fred Astaire and Leslie Caron and Thelma Ritter, who we love. This is one of my faves. But the more you think, and I know when I tell you about it, you're going to be like, girl, but listen, it's romantic if you don't think about it. Let me just tell you, hold on. This is Jervis Pendleton, a silly little millionaire who likes to dance, but he's also like a very single playboy. Now, Jervis goes to France and his car breaks down, and the closest place that he can find to call for help is an orphanage. Now, the orphanage is full of orphan-aged orphans, and you know what I mean by orphan-aged orphans. But there is one orphan taking care of all the orphans who is an 18-year-old orphan, Julie Andre, or as we gonna call her, Julie Andre. Now, I can imagine the feeling that you feel if you see an orphan and you're like, I really want to adopt that orphan. And I can also imagine the feeling that you feel as a man seeing an 18-year-old French girl. But Jervis has whatever feeling you have when you see an 18-year-old French girl and you say, I want to adopt that French girl. Now, his assistant and his friend at the American Embassy in France both have the same reaction that we probably all do. Shortly afterwards, Julie finds out that this secret man is her guardian and is flying her to America to go to school. Well, apparently these kids don't know how shadows work, because Julie asked him what he looks like, and because they saw his elongated shadow on the wall, they tell her he got long legs. So she start calling him Daddy Longlegs. Daddy Longlegs puts Julie in an all-girls school. Daddy Longlegs buys Julie a whole new wardrobe. Like real nice, expensive stuff. Daddy Longlegs asks that she write to him once a month as if he were her father. And he does not write her back. He does not speak to her. He does not communicate with her at all. So this orphan, who the only thing she's ever known has been in France, has been flown to another country by a man who will not communicate with her at all and puts her at an all-girl school. Okay. For 2 years, she's writing him letters, and he has not read a single one. But his secretary is reading them and crying and filing them away, until one day she finally breaks and says, you gotta reach out and talk to this girl. She is so lonely. So Jervis sits down and reads 2 years worth of letters from this girl that he forgot about, who is now 20 years old. So it makes sense that Jervis would write her back, tell her he's very proud of how she's doing in school, keep up the good work like a dad, right? Jervis doesn't do that. Jervis decides to take a trip up to his niece's school for the spring dance. His niece, who he has not seen since she was born. His niece, who is Julie Andre's roommate. So, of course, he's just gonna, kindly check in on her, make sure she's doing okay, and go home, right? No, Jervis is gonna flirt with her in the garden, underneath the statue of his grandfather, who was one of the founders of the school. And you can't leave without doing the slew foot. This is one of the parts that'll get you and make you forget. Anyway, after what is now his second encounter with Julie, he decides to take great interest in his niece and fly her, and of course Julie, out for a nice little trip in New York. Oh, also, Julie was seeing a boy, her other roommate's brother. But Jervis found out that that boy was looking for a coal mine to work in, and so miraculously, he had a space in his coal mine in Bolivia. So the one boy that she is talking to, he sent the boy to Bolivia. Okay, so Jervis's niece and Julie are supposed to come to New York to visit. Jervis's niece gets sick and sends Julie by herself. Sends her 20-year-old friend to hang out with her 30-something-year-old uncle by herself. And they have a gay old time for one night, just dancing around the town. The next day, Jervis goes looking for engagement rings. And his American ambassador friend happens to get in touch with him and say, Jervis, I heard the conversation you had, old girl. What are you doing? So what does Jervis do? He tells this orphan, who he has now brought to New York to hang out for the week, that he has a sudden trip and he got to abandon her in New York by herself. But he gonna pay for her to do stuff by herself. Now, this is seemingly two men that Julie is dealing with who want to pay for Julie to do a bunch of stuff but don't really want to talk to her. You writing letters to her guardian daddy Longlegs, man. He won't write her back, and she thought she was in love with Jervis, and he don't want her. It's literally graduation day, and this girl with no family and no friends has no idea where she's about to go because she can't stay on campus anymore. She's graduating. All of a sudden, this girl crying in her room. The secretary comes and says, "I'm finna take you to Daddy Longlegs, girl." They had to tell Jervis that his assistant was sick in order to get him to fly back so that he could meet this girl after she graduate, who ain't got nowhere to go. And at first, he don't want to see her until he find out that old boy that he sent to the coal mines in Bolivia, he thought that boy was marrying Julie. That boy is actually marrying his niece. So now, because Julie is single and 21, they drop her off at his little museum business place, and they like, "Oh, you gonna know him when you see him." She sees Jervis and thinks that Jervis came to talk to her daddy Longlegs until she realizes that Jervis is daddy Longlegs, and he proposes to her. They have hung out exactly 2 times. One time at the spring dance and one night in New York. And he spent the rest of the time as 2 separate people not speaking to her and avoiding her and making her feel lonely and isolated as an orphan. And after these 2 times of spending time with her and avoiding her for the rest of these last 4 years, they finna get married. And then they just twirl away. Oh, how sweet. It really is a sweet movie if you don't think about how weird it is. And also, Fred Astaire's wife passed during the filming of this movie, and he still managed to put on such a charming performance. I think maybe that's why I have a soft spot for it.